Please like and subscribe my channel. Chapter 301. Very simple, he said. Let my disciple go, and you can take Mo Hong away. Zhang Zan looked over. Luming Yu is just a small fry in the Dharma form realm. His cultivation is not high, and his strength is lacking. Keeping him is meaningless to you. On the other hand, this Mo Hong is your direct senior disciple. His cultivation has already reached the pinnacle of the Galaxy 3 Dan and could break through at any moment. Which is more important? I don't need to say more, do I? Elder Bai Yi did not take up his offer and snorted coldly, do you really think I won't kill you for coming here alone? With that, he took a step forward and, in the blink of an eye, was less than 10 meters away from Zhang Zan. What are you doing? If you dare come any closer, I will kill him. In Zhang Zan's hand, the Mo Dao was pushed forward with force. In the blink of an eye, a fresh red blood mark appeared on Mo Hong's neck. Feel free to kill. It's just a disciple. As long as I can break through, what does it matter if all my disciples die? Elder Bai Yi was completely unfazed by the threat and continued to walk forward. Teacher. Seeing that his teacher was so heartless and didn't care about his life or death, Mo Hong's eyes filled with deep disappointment. Mo Hong, I've raised you since you were a child. I've passed on my cultivation method to you, given you strength and power. Now it's time for you to repay me. Rest assured, after your death, every year on Qingming and Mid-Autumn Festival, I will offer paper money for you, still acknowledging you as my disciple. With a snort, Elder Bai Yi's Mo Dao abruptly appeared in his hand and he slashed towards Mo Hong. Spontaneously seeking to kill his own disciple to avoid being threatened. Teacher, you. Mo Hong had not expected the other party to be so ruthless and decisive. As soon as Elder Bai Yi made his move, it was utterly merciless. Mo Hong felt his world collapsing in an instant. As he prepared himself to embrace death, he felt the strength that had been binding him suddenly dissipate, and a force hit his waist, kicking him away into the distance. Bang! Thrown over 10 meters, he crashed into a large tree. The glint of the saber from his teacher's strike passed by his face, leaving a deep ravine in the ground in a moment. He saved me. Knowing that if that strike had landed solidly on his body, he would undoubtedly have been killed on the spot, Mo Hong gratefully looked towards the youth not far away. His enemy had saved him, while his own master sought to kill him. It all seemed so fantastical. With one strike hitting air, Elder Bai Yi's gaze flickered. He raised his Mo Dao and swept it toward Zhang Zan in the distance. The move was swift. Before the saber even arrived, the saber chi was already there, splitting the air and emitting a wailing sound. Zhang Zan seemed to have anticipated this move. He leapt violently, retreating backwards. Think you can escape? After a single exchange, he immediately discerned the youth's cultivation level, Galaxy 2 Dan Peak, not a weak strength, but far from his own. Changing from a horizontal slash to a thrust, the massive Mo Dao in the air drew out a pattern and thrust swiftly towards Zhang Zan's lower body. One had to admit, this move was quite exquisite. At Galaxy 2 Dan, one couldn't fly yet. This thrust came just as Zhang Zan's old strength had been spent, and new strength had not yet emerged. Unintentionally, the saber chi and his descending body would align perfectly, which is to say, although the thrust aimed for the lower body, at the point of the saber's arrival, it would pierce straight through Zhang Zan's heart. Truly worthy of being the founder of Mo Dao. His response to battle techniques and on-the-spot decision-making were countless times stronger than Min Zhongtao or Mo Hong. Mo Hong on the side hadn't expected his teacher to act so quickly. The benefactor who had just saved him was about to die before his eyes, and he couldn't help but exclaim in shock. Before his words had finished, he saw the youth in the air point his Mo Dao forward violently. The long blade glinted like flowing light, falling upon the back of the opposing blade. Using the momentum of that point, he soared backwards through the air, drifting over 10 meters like a falling leaf, and landed gently. Ah! Mo Hong exclaimed again. Though it was the same exclamation of, ah! The first carried shock and regret, while the second held genuine surprise and joy. The emotions were completely different. You're quite fast, and you react well, but it's a pity, your cultivation is too weak. Elder Bai Yi did not pursue but instead put away his saber and stood, looking over indifferently. His 3 consecutive strikes, ones that even experts of the same level would have had a hard time evading, were effortlessly escaped by the opponent who was merely at Galaxy 2 Dan Peak and did not sustain a single injury. Just this battle awareness alone was impressive. Indeed worthy of a mandate chaos master, truly extraordinary. Had it been before, I would have had difficulty dodging your moves just now. Lucky for me, my cultivation has plummeted recently, otherwise, I might have just died. Zhang Zan smiled lightly. You. Mo Bei's face trembled. The other party spoke the truth. The legacy had been stolen by him, resulting in a backlash, and his cultivation plummeted, which was why he failed to kill him on the spot. Otherwise, the first strike would have cleaved him in half. Teacher, did you really want to kill me just now? At this moment, Mo Hong walked over, his eyes still filled with disbelief. So what if I did? What if I didn't? Mo Bai looked over indifferently. Mo Hong shook his head. You are my teacher, you raised me since I was young. You are the person I respect the most. I don't believe you would strike at me without hesitation. As long as you can think like that, it's not bad. The reason I attacked you just now was to avoid being threatened, to save someone. Now it seems that you have been saved, and my plan has succeeded. Mo Bai nodded. Is that so? Mo Hong hesitated, but, your strike just now was unstoppable. If it hadn't been for Lord Zhang Zan pushing me away, I might already be dead. What? You doubt me? Mo Bei's expression darkened. Disciple wouldn't dare. Mo Hong quickly clasped his fists. HMPH. It's best if you don't dare. After speaking, Mo Bai strode over to Mo Hong. Alright, stop thinking nonsense. Just remember, your teacher has raised you since you were young and would never harm you. Be careful. Mo Hong nodded and was about to say something when he suddenly heard an urgent cry from beside him, and immediately after, he felt a sharp saber chi rushing towards his face. His hair stood on end, and Mo Hong paid no heed to further thought, dodging swiftly. Fight! The glint of the saber fell, and Mo Hong felt an intense pain in his right arm, which was then sent flying through the air, severed by a single slash. My arm! His vision darkening, Mo Hong's body shook uncontrollably. Looking up, he saw that the person who had struck was still his teacher, his gaze now cold and ferocious. Gone was the previous kindness, only a stranger's visage remained. Quite a fast reaction. Seeing that he had not yet killed his student, Mo Bai let out a cold shout and swung the Mo Dao again, chopping horizontally. Having managed to dodge once was merely luck. So up close, unleashing another strike, especially while injured, Mo Hong held no hopes. He prepared to close his eyes and await death, when suddenly, he heard a series of clanging sounds by his ear. He urgently looked up to see Zhang Zan, wielding the Mo Dao, looking somewhat ragged but still managing to defend against his teacher's attacks and saving him once again. Killing you once has already made you doubt, you'll definitely not be wholeheartedly with him anymore. With that being the case, how could I possibly let you leave alive? Seeing that at this moment he still harbored hope, Zhang Zan let out a speechless cry of indignation. Yes, Mo Hong suddenly realized, having spent so much time with his teacher, how could he not know his personality? Since his teacher had murderous intent, he would never abandon the deed halfway, so all that was said before was false. The only purpose was to make him lower his guard for a sure hit. So what if you've realized this now? Do you really think that just the two of you can stop me? Mo Bai snorted coldly. His cultivation had dropped an entire major realm due to the backlash, but his understanding of skills and grasp of combat remained, and he was much higher than the young man before him by nature. Killing him wouldn't be too difficult. Who said there were only two of us? Zhang Zan gave a faint smile. Come on out. Rustle. Accompanying his words, 4 elders emerged slowly from the deep forest. They were the elders who had come from the Fu family. Chapter 302. Snow. Elder Qinghong, Elder Qinghan, is it you? Recognizing the identity of the 4 elders, Mo Bai narrowed his eyes. The Fu family has always been neutral. When did they also want to get involved in the affairs of the Mo Blade sect? The Fu family solidifies its status through marital alliances, generally not involving themselves in grudges or feuds, thus considered neutral. Our Fu family is neutral, but, for someone who doesn't even spare their own disciples, I cannot remain neutral in this matter. Today's affair is my own, and has nothing to do with the Fu family. Elder Fu Qinghong waved her hand. This is also my personal action, unrelated to the Fu family. Elder Fu Qinghan nodded her head as well. The remaining 2 elders stepped forward at the same time, expressing similar sentiments. They were entrusted by young Master Fu Yingying to assist Zhang Zan. Unexpectedly, they would be opposing the Mo Blade sect. However, even if they were in opposition, it was no hindrance as long as they disconnected from the Fu family. Personal action. Very well, very well. Mo Baiyi flashed a look and turned his head towards Zhang Zan. Is this what you're relying on? To deal with you, it's more than enough. Zhang Zan smiled. Ha ha ha. With a loud laugh, Mo Baiyi said, it seems you know nothing of my strength. Elder Qinghong, Elder Qinghan, they possess the same cultivation as me at the moment, Galaxy 5 Dan, but they have practiced Fox Charm Destiny, which inherently lacks strong combat power. Surely you don't actually think that just because our cultivations are the same, you could fight me? Zhang Zan frowned. Actually, what the other party said was not wrong. Fox Charm Destiny was powerful in its charming power, but in terms of pure combat, the power was ordinary. Coupled with the fact that their cultivation was lower than their opponents, and Mo Dao Destiny was a combat-oriented destiny, even with greater numbers on their side, victory would not be so easily achieved. Putting these thoughts aside, Zhang Zan turned to look at Elder Fu Qinghong and the others, bowing with fists clasped. Elders, we are relying on you now. Don't worry. Initially, seeing it was Master Mo, we did not want to interfere, but he has been so ungratefully treacherous that we cannot stand idly by. The elders nodded their heads all at once, taking a step forward. We might need to trouble the elders even further. To follow my command shortly, I intend to capture him alive and force out the location of the disciples. Zhang Zan continued. Capture me alive. Ha 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 ha, are you dreaming? Zhang Zan's words were not whispered, but declared openly, causing the brows of the elders to furrow deeply. Mo Baiyi laughed uproariously as if he were looking at a fool. With his strength, it was nearly impossible for these people to win against him even exhausting their full might, let alone capture him alive. And to state such things outright, his caution would dissolve completely during combat. How would they fight then? Young Master Zhang, be careful with your words. Elder Fu Qinghong gestured. Still young and inexperienced, revealing one's hand before a fight was a grave taboo. It's fine. Of course, if the elders find capturing him too easy, feel free to discipline him a bit more, to let him know his mistake. Zhang Zan apparently thought he had not said enough. You were looking for death. Mo Baiyi narrowed his eyes. Cough cough, Fu Qinghong's face flushed red. They knew their own strengths very well. To say capturing him was easy, it was still uncertain whether they could even win if they fought with all their might. All right, let's talk about victory first. Afraid that the other side might continue and say more astounding words, Elder Fu Qinghong waved her hand, her gaze decisively fixed forward, commanding everyone, later on, follow my commands to set up the Fu family collaborative offensive formation. Yes, Fu Qinghan and the others nodded at the same time. The combat power of the Fu family alone might not seem too strong, but when combined, they were formidable. Whoosh! As the conversation ended, Elder Fu Qinghong stepped forward, flicking her wrist, and a whip appeared in her palm, lashing out towards Mo Baiyi. Seeing that her weapon was this, Zhang Zan raised an eyebrow. As expected of Fox Charm Destiny, quite the flamboyant touch. Overestimating yourselves. Seeing they dared to take the initiative to attack, Mo Baiyi let out a cold shout, his long saber swinging into motion. In the blink of an eye, the air around was filled with the blade wind. Nearby trees and rocks would crumble into powder the moment they touched it. Faced with such a powerful blade wind, despite having the advantage in numbers, Elder Fu Qinghong and the others couldn't gain any advantage and were instead forced to retreat continuously, unable to advance. Set up the formation, Elder Fu Qinghong called out softly. Hearing this, the other three elders immediately moved to their specified positions, their moving silhouettes resembling bewitching dancers. If they had been 17 or 18-year-old girls dancing in such a manner, it surely would have dazzled onlookers, but these elders were all over 50, and their flirtatious postures immediately drew Zhang Zan's discomfort. It wasn't just him, even Mo Baiyi too had a green complexion. Disgusting. Get out of my way. An explosive shout boomed as the long saber transformed into a cold gleam, striking towards the leading Elder Fu Qinghong. Unexpectedly, this man was so ruthless. Elder Fu Qinghong's face changed, and she quickly retreated. Before they could retreat, they heard Zhang Zan's voice transmission by their ears. Don't retreat, meet it head on. Meet it. Fu Qinghong looked at the sharp glint of the saber before her and her eyebrows twitched. What kind of joke was this? It was the opponent's full-powered strike. If she met it head-on, her head would be cleaved into two. Not bothering with the opponent, she sprinted backwards, but after just 2 steps, she saw Mo Bai aiming the fierce and unparalleled glint of his saber at her head. Suddenly, he turned and brought it down towards Fu Qinghan beside her. Because she dodged, Fu Qinghan was left without protection and was stabbed in the arm, leaving a cut from which blood immediately began to flow. Ah! Fu Qinghan's face turned pale, and he involuntarily took 2 steps back. The formation that had just formed was immediately disrupted, losing all its power. Fu Qinghong's pupils constricted. The vicious move from the opponent just now was nothing but a trap. If she had listened to Zhang Zan just now and didn't retreat but met the attack, Mo Bai's move would have been thrown off, and Elder Qinghan wouldn't have been hurt. In fact, they might even have had the opportunity to gain the upper hand. Could it be that this guy really didn't want her to die, wasn't just spouting nonsense, and could actually direct her to victory? It must have been a fluke. Shaking her head, she cast aside this unrealistic thought. She, a Galaxy 5 Dan powerhouse, hadn't spotted the trap in the opponent's move. How could he, a mere Galaxy 2 Dan who had just broken through, possibly understand it? Ha 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 ha, with this level of strength, you want to kill me, you want to capture me alive. Mo Bai let out a cold laugh. Originally thinking that defeating these 4 in a joint attack would take some time given his sudden decline in cultivation, now it seemed he had overestimated them. They were just a ragtag bunch, easily destroyed with a flick of the wrist. Fu Qinghong clenched her fists. Young Master Zhang, only at the Galaxy 2 Dan peak, had fought with him for 3 moves, not only unscathed but also managing to rescue Mo Hong, yet, they were stronger and still lost. Elder Qinghong, please listen to me. Spotting their problem, Zhang Zan couldn't hold back and spoke again. No need. She could have ignored it, but upon hearing that, Fu Qinghong's face grew even uglier. She cut him off, turning again to the others, formed the myriad flower formation. Yes, Fu Qinghan and the others immediately set up the formation differently, this time holding petals instead of whips. No one knew where they came from, but each looked as sharp as a throwing weapon. Whoosh! As the formation took shape, dozens of petals flew towards Mo Bai, now trapped at the center. HMPH. Mo Bai remained unflustered, swinging his Mo Dao wildly, and in the blink of an eye, a huge barrier formed around his body, blocking all the incoming petals. Myriad flowers concealing snow, the 7th variation of myriad flower formation. Fu Qinghong shouted again. Fu Qinghan and the others stepped forward simultaneously, their petals being released in unison, falling like snowflakes. Quick, pull back. Zhang Zan's face darkened. Pull back. Frowning, Fu Qinghong was full of displeasure. Myriad flowers concealing snow was one of the strongest collaborative techniques of the Fu family. Once activated, it left the opponent completely defenseless and unable to dodge. At this point, a close attack could easily pierce through the defense and secure victory. If they retreated now, wouldn't they be squandering a great advantage? Thinking this, her actions naturally didn't stop. Fearing that Fu Qinghan and the others might follow Zhang Zan's command, her face darkened, and she also shouted, "Keep moving forward." Before her words ended, a loud laugh rang out. Ha ha ha, you've been fooled. At that moment, Mo Bai, who had been on the defensive, suddenly opened up his attack, and his Mo Dao tore through the air with ferocity. Plunk, 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 plunk. 4 continuous sounds, and the 4 elders were injured at the same time. Looking at the cuts on their chest, arms, legs, and other places caused by the Mo Dao, all 4 elders turned pale. Although the injuries were not too serious, it demonstrated that even their joint effort could not secure victory. Truly a sect leader, too terrifying. No, wait, if we had listened to Zhang Zan just now and pulled back directly, maybe it wouldn't have come to this. Suddenly, the muttering voice of Fu Qinghan sounded. Twice she had been slashed by the opposing Mo Dao, feeling the pain most acutely. Chapter 303. Fu Qinghong fell silent. If the first time was good luck, the fact that the second time they had figured out the opponent's trap meant they truly had real skill. Set up a formation again, this time following Zhang Zan's. This thought didn't trouble her for long as Fu Qinghong shouted loudly. Right or wrong, first try it. Okay. Everyone nodded at the same time. Now you realize, but it's already too late. Mo Bai raised an eyebrow, not giving them the chance to set up their formation. He strode forward, his Mo Dao waved like the wind, chopping down over their heads. Fu Qinghong, startled, hurriedly took her whip to block. Though the handle was also forged from fine steel, it couldn't withstand the unleashed Mo Dao. Crash! In an instant, the handle split in two, the remaining saber chi continued forward, striking Fu Qinghong's chest. With a muffled sound, Fu Qinghong was sent flying backward, blood spewing from her mouth in midair as she could no longer move. One move, severely injured. Elder Qinghong. Unexpectedly this guy moved so fast, by the time Fu Qinghan and the others reacted, it was already too late. As they waved their petals again, Mo Bai didn't dodge and continued rushing forward, chopping down once more. This strike was even more ruthless than before. Fu Qinghong, with cultivation higher than hers, couldn't resist, and naturally, neither could she. This is bad, he's seen the flaw. Zhang Zan's expression turned ashen. Had Fu Qinghong and others listened to him earlier, they would have almost won, not ending up in such a sorry state. Now, after tasting these two moves, Mo Bai realized that these Fu family elders, despite their fancy techniques, lacked sufficient attack power. Subduing them only needed overpowering strength, making the outcome no longer suspenseful. Elder Qinghan, don't dodge, use your whip to strike Mo Bai's left leg. Knowing it was impossible for the three of them to win without Fu Qinghong, Zhang Zan transmitted his voice, simultaneously darting forward, his arm extending fiercely, the Mo Dao in his palm slashing across. Ding! The two sabers collided, and the Mo Dao in Zhang Zan's hand, obtained from Ling Baiyang, was of average quality and was chopped in two after one strike. However, this block halted the saber chi that descended towards Fu Qinghan. Failing to land the blow, Mo Bai didn't attack again but instead stepped back. Zhang Zan, with a grim face, turned to look at Elder Fu Qinghan on the side. I told you to strike his left leg, why didn't you move? Having blocked the Mo Dao, Mo Bai was vulnerable below the waist. The strike just now, had it been executed, would have certainly hit. If she didn't want to get injured and forcefully withdrew her strength, he could have taken the chance to counterattack. Such an opportunity was wasted. Disobeyed once, twice, now thrice, and still not listening. No wonder the Fu family, despite having many masters, still needed marriage alliances to maintain their position. These elders' strength and adaptability were indeed not commendable. Expecting them to defeat me, Zhang Zan, I really don't know if you are smart or foolish. Seeing his embarrassment, Mo Bai scoffed. The women of the Fu family, practicing fox charm destiny, were each indoctrinated from a young age to be independent and strong, to not heed men's orders. Do you really think a few words would completely convince them? What a dream. Zhang Zan frowned. No wonder. Whether it's the clan head or the elders of the Fu family, all are women, held in high regard, they naturally have an aversion to men taking the lead. Being strangers with him, directly giving them instructions, it's really bizarre that they would listen. Without letting these few collaborate, relying on himself, he too likely couldn't defeat the founder of Mo Dao Destiny. Like this, you still want to kill me, all of you, die. Without giving Zhang Zan time to adjust, Mo Baiyi moved forward again, swinging the Mo Dao, blade wind howling. Knowing his limited strength, and even with the Mo Dao, he could not win, Zhang Zan flicked his wrist and the cold nether sword appeared in his palm, stabbing forward. Sword art. You've actually also practiced the way of sword destiny. Seeing the young man's exquisite swordsmanship and failing to win after several moves, Mo Baiyi became agitated once again. This guy indeed has methods to practice other fragments of the heavens. Luckily he didn't reveal it in the Heaven Mandate Hall, otherwise, such treasures would have been snatched by others first. Let's attack together. As the pathos of heaven was deployed, Zhang Zan knew he could barely hold off Mo Baiyi but also realized he couldn't hold on for long. Unable to withstand any longer, he looked towards Fu Qinghan and the others behind him. Whoever dares to help, will end up just like Fu Qinghong, Mo Baiyi bellowed loudly. Fu Qinghan's face turned pale, and they all couldn't help but take a step back in unison. Having only exchanged a few moves, all of them ended up injured. The most powerful among them, Fu Qinghong, even lay on the ground unable to rise, and everyone started to feel some fear. Zhang Zan's head exploded. Mouth after mouth claiming to replace men, looking down at men, but when danger came, they all retreated faster than anyone. These sorts of boxer-like women, truly headache-inducing. Ha ha ha, let them cooperate with you. Maybe in the next life. Having guessed this would happen, Mo Baiyi laughed loudly again, swinging the Mo Dao like the wind, continuously chopping downward. Zhang Zan's arm went numb, constantly retreating. Forget it, ignite the new world, let's kill him. Raising an eyebrow, just as Zhang Zan was about to risk getting hurt to ignite the new world and unleash powerful strength to kill him, a thought suddenly struck him. Having Fu Qinghan and the others follow his instructions to set up a formation alone would be difficult. What if he charmed them first? Once successful, wouldn't they obediently listen? Fu Qingqing, Fu Yingying, they were already completely compliant with him. It's just, charming a group of women over 50 years old, really quite hard to swallow. Never mind, no time to worry about that now, kill him first. With this thought, Zhang Zan did not hesitate and unleashed the fox charm destiny. Instantly, in the eyes of the people, his image transformed. No longer was he the man desperately resisting Mo Dao, but dressed in white, his robes fluttering, he looked like a lone cavalier, elegant and dashing. He's so handsome. The injured Fu Qinghong's eyes were the first to glaze over. Then came the two weaker elders, and finally Fu Qinghan. Zhang Zan's mastery of the fox charm destiny had already reached the 4th level, stronger by several degrees than the deceased ancestor of the Fu family. At full power now, the 4 Fu family elders instantly fell, each one full of admiration. This time, they should smoothly cooperate with me now. Zhang Zan breathed a sigh of relief, just about to command these elders to join forces against the enemy, when he felt that the continuously slashing saber art had become much gentler. He couldn't help but look up, only to see the tall and robust Mo Baiyi looking back at him with pink cheeks and eyes soft as silk. Darling. Quote. Zhang Zan. Damn, I used too much power, even charmed that man over there. Chapter 304 Heavenly Destiny Luo Book. His complexion ashen, Zhang Zan felt nauseous. If a beautiful woman had shouted like that, he would have enjoyed it, but facing a man nearly 2 meters tall, burly with a bushy chest, and looking like Lu Zishan, he felt like dying. Alright. Can't use this next time. Zhang Zan wanted to cry. Damn it, if he had known it would be like this, he would have burned the new world and killed him outright, so he wouldn't have to suffer such humiliation. Die. Despite feeling disgusted, he knew this was the best chance to kill his opponent, so he immediately withdrew the fox charm destiny, and his sword flashed coldly. Pooch. Freed from the influence of fox charm destiny, Mo Baiyi quickly tried to dodge but was too late and was stabbed in the left arm. Blood flowed, spilling on the ground. What is this demon art? Retreating hastily, Mo Baiyi broke out in a cold sweat. Even if the opponent's sword had penetrated his throat, he wouldn't have been so scared. For some reason, he had just found Zhang Zan so attractive he hoped something would happen between them. He even thought of names for their children. His eyes were filled with nothing but desire. That was truly terrifying. He wasn't like those disciples who either couldn't get it up, or were impotent, with different tastes from ordinary people. He was a man of iron. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. Good thing, the charm wasn't successful. Seeing his reaction, Zhang Zan also sighed in relief. Thank goodness it hadn't worked. Otherwise, if he had come running over with that face, Zhang Zan really wouldn't have known what to do. Let's attack together. Although this guy hadn't been charmed, the other elders had already fallen, each looking at Zhang Zan with admiration. If they had any doubts about him before, they were now utterly convinced. All right. With a shout, 3 elders surrounded him with fighting spirit. Even the severely injured Fu Qinghong crawled over, wanting to lend a hand for fear that Zhang Zan would disdain her. You should stay there. Knowing that if this guy came over, he would only cause chaos, Zhang Zan waved his hand dismissively and attacked Mo Baiyi again, simultaneously shouting, Elder Qinghan, attack his left hand with the skill Falling Wild Geese Autumn Wind. Elder Qingshe, attack his right with the skill Great River Sunset. In the blink of an eye, he not only arranged their positions but also called out all the skills they were supposed to use. Fu Qinghan, Fu Qingshe, and the others, who had thought that even following his orders, it would be a tough fight to defeat the leader of the Mo Blade sect, were surprised to find that after just 2 moves, his techniques were in disarray and his strength wasn't as formidable. Has Zhang Zan discovered the flaws and defects in his techniques? The others were too caught up in the fight to notice, but Fu Qinghong, watching from the sidelines, immediately understood. The positions and skills Zhang Zan instructed not only allowed them to predict Mo Bei's moves but also targeted the loopholes in his technique. Every motion was perfectly counteracted. Even though Mo Bei was extremely powerful, he was now being pressured uncomfortably. If I had known this earlier, I should have listened to him. Fu Qinghong's face was red with embarrassment. Before, she thought Zhang Zan was too young and stubbornly refused to listen. She ended up severely injured and nearly led them to a complete defeat. If they had listened, Mo Bei would have been killed long ago and they wouldn't have had to struggle as they were now. Her adoring eyes welled up with tears, while across from her, Mo Bei was on the verge of going insane. The Mo blade is a long weapon that requires a certain distance to exhibit its maximum power. Currently, under the guidance of Zhang Zan, Fu Qinghan and the other two elders stuck to him like a bone-deep poison, never more than a meter away, rendering all his ultimate moves ineffective. The more he fought, the more uncomfortable he felt. At this moment, he realized that their previous statement about capturing him alive was not an empty threat. 3 elders with lower cultivation than his had managed to beat him to this state. If only Fu Qinghong hadn't acted on his own initiative, he might have truly been captured. Pucci, Pucci, Pucci. His heart was in turmoil, wanting to dodge but failing to escape. A series of cold glints struck his chest, thigh, shoulder, and even his buttocks, each hit drawing fresh blood. Fortunately, the wounds weren't deep, otherwise, he would have been waiting for death. Zhang Zan, I indeed underestimated you. But do you really think you can kill me? In your dreams? Realizing that continuing the fight could indeed lead to his death, Mo Bei uttered a cold shout. With a flick of his wrist, he revealed a jade token in his palm, which he lightly crushed and threw towards Fu Qinghan and the others. Whirl, whirl, whirl. The jade token suddenly exploded, countless saber glints scattering in every direction, like flowers scattered by celestial maidens. Retreat quickly. Zhang Zan's expression changed, he stepped forward, and his sword continuously flickered, transforming into pearls of light amidst the dark night. Ding, 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 ding. The sound of rain pounding on a copper gong filled the air. His sword blocked all the saber glints, and Fu Qinghan and the others barely escaped disaster. At that moment, Mo Bei took the opportunity to leap out of the fray, putting more than 30 meters between himself and the rest. This is the Heavenly Destiny Luo book. You've actually forged this thing, Fu Qinghong couldn't help but cry out. Heavenly Destiny Luo book. Zhang Zan echoed with a hint of confusion. This was the first time he had heard this name. Seeing his confusion, Fu Qinghong explained, the Heavenly Destiny Luo book is a special container into which a part of one's heavenly destiny power is locked. Once in danger, it can be released to save oneself from death or fend off peril. Zhang Zan nodded. It was somewhat similar to scrolls in novels. The Master Teacher continent also possessed similar items. However, this Heavenly Destiny Luo book could not only unleash attacks but also act as a decoy to draw in the power of Heavenly Destiny. If you were to compare the power of Heavenly Destiny to a guided missile from his previous life, then the Heavenly Destiny Luo book would be akin to the flares released by a combat jet. It's extremely difficult to refine this thing. You need to capture a portion of Heavenly Destiny to succeed, and observing his Heavenly Destiny, it seems very intact, without a single flaw. Fu Qinghong said this with a grim expression. If I'm not mistaken, he must have secretly killed his disciples, extracting their heavenly destiny to craft. It killed his disciples. Zhang Zan's pupils shrank. Yes, since the Heavenly Destiny Luo book contains the power of destiny, it naturally requires human lives to be fulfilled. If he were to draw from his own destiny, it would result in an incomplete fate, making it nearly impossible to advance to the 4th level of Mo blade cultivation later on. To prevent troubles for himself, he could only extract from his students. Fu Qinghong continued, this is also why some powerful clans and powerful forces cultivate students. Zhang Zan's face was ashen. He now thoroughly understood why Empyrean Kong Shi was exposed so soon after arriving in this world. He taught without discrimination and imparted knowledge earnestly, never treating students as tools. This contrasted sharply with the master-disciple relationships of this world, making him a true anomaly. It was strange that he hadn't been discovered earlier. Chapter 305 The Belated Regret. So what if you know? Which power doesn't engage in these things? Fu Qinghong, stop pretending here. Can you dare say that your Fu family doesn't possess the Heavenly Destiny Luo book? After hearing her explanation, Mo Bai let out a cold snort. Fu Qinghong remained silent. The other party was right. All the powerful clans of the Zui royal city had once crafted such things. It was no longer a secret, and the Fu family treasured no less than 10 of them. Compared to collateral branches, the direct lineage was naturally more important, willing to forsake life to afford others a chance to live, and some were indeed willing. Zhang Zan, today I might not be able to kill you, but you also can't kill me, right? Don't think about catching up to me. If I truly die, your student will have to be buried with me. Mo Bai laughed loudly and, with a tap of his foot on the ground, suddenly darted away. At this moment, from behind a big tree nearby, a glint of the saber, sharp as a whirlwind and brilliant as the sea, suddenly appeared and slashed towards his head. It was none other than Mo Hong, who had been badly hurt in the beginning. Having personally witnessed his teacher's deeds, his heart was utterly disappointed. He quietly hid here and launched a sneak attack. Mo Bai had not expected someone behind him and had no defense. In the moment of crisis, he tilted his head, and his formidable strength exploded, forcibly shifting him half a foot in midair. That half a foot spared him from the lethal blow, but the glint of the saber struck his shoulder, severing his right arm along with his shoulder blade. Mo Hong, you're seeking death. Feeling the intense pain in his body, Mo Bai was furious, and he lashed out with a fierce kick. That kick contained all his rage. Mo Hong, having lost an arm, was already in a hard place. In this crisis, he raised his Mo Dao to block horizontally, but Mo Bai's foot slammed down on the saber, sending the long saber flying out, crashing into Mo Hong's chest. A spurt. Mo Hong's chest and arm bones were severed cleanly, his internal organs were in complete disarray, and he was clearly not going to live. Whoosh! With the force of that kick, Mo Bai shot out dozens of meters once again, disappearing into the valley in the blink of an eye. However, although he fled, having had an arm and shoulder severed by the saber, he was now severely disabled, if not dead. Unless he could find medicine to regenerate flesh and bones, he would have to remain this way for life. Where are you running? Zhang Zan rushed forward swiftly, but the space before him was empty. Mo Bai's figure was nowhere to be seen. Despite the fact that this guy had been struck by a saber and had his cultivation of the Cosmos Bridge Realm pinnacle repeatedly sabotaged by him. He was still at the Galaxy 5 Dan peak, and fleeing for his life. He was extremely fast, even Zhang Zan couldn't catch up. After searching around and finding nothing, he had no choice but to return to Mo Hong and expressed his confusion. Why did you attack him? This Mo Hong before him had been utterly loyal to Mo Bai, considered his most faithful lackey. His sudden ambush was something Zhang Zan hadn't anticipated. Not only was he puzzled, but Fu Qinghong and the others were also full of confusion. Lying askew on the ground, Mo Hong had already lost all strength due to his grievous wounds and looked over weakly. He has taken a total of 20 direct disciples. 20. Zhang Zan was taken aback and then realized something, his pupils constricted. He currently knew of only Mo Hong, Min Zhongtao, Mo Qing, and Ling Baiyang as disciples of Mo Bai. As for Chen Yuan and others, they were from the Grand Disciple generation. 20 direct disciples, only 4 remain. Doesn't that mean 16 have already died? Combined with the method of creating the Heavenly Destiny Luo book, it chills to the bone. Mo Hong did not continue to explain, but with a distant look in his eyes and a slow voice, said, "When I was 8 years old, he adopted me and my younger brother, giving me the name Mo Hong, and taught us powerful saber techniques. Over the years, I have always regarded him as my biological father, never doubting his words, until one year, my brother, more talented than me, noticed a problem in our practice. One day he came to me and said, 'Teacher, saber art has an irregular movement that seems to compromise a man's instincts if practiced long term. Has he taught us wrongly?' At the time, I didn't take it seriously and just told him to go and ask the teacher. And after he did, he never came back. The teacher told me he was sent on a mission and was killed by the Jiaodong White Blade sect. I devoted myself to practice and eventually slaughtered every member of the White Blade sect, avenging my brother." You wiped out the White Blade sect. That was a mystery in Zui City at the time. Fu Qinghong, looking shocked, remarked and then explained upon seeing Zhang Zan's apparent unfamiliarity. The White Blade sect, also practitioners of saber art, was named for the white ropes tied to the hilts of their blades. Their leader, Bai Yimu, who mastered the white saber destiny, was quite famous. Zhang Zan nodded. In a place like Zui City, where sects were as numerous as hairs on an ox, it was common for them to crush each other and kill without relent. At this moment, Mo Hong began to laugh crazily and hideously. Back then, I was grateful for the teacher's covert assistance, but now I know, my brother actually died by his hand, and the so-called White Blade sect was just a rival he wanted me to help eliminate. Zhang Zan fell silent. Indeed, he didn't need an explanation, he had understood everything from the previous conversation. This Mo Bai was inherently indifferent, caring neither for his so-called disciples nor for his kinsmen as much as he did for his own cultivation. Once contradicted, death was the answer. Back then, Ling Baiyang was lucky to escape quickly, hiding in Han Yuan City, otherwise, he too might have been long dead. Mo Hong continued, over the years, for my junior brother Mo Ruo, I annihilated the entire Qi family, for my senior brother Mo Su, I killed 32 people, and for my junior brother Mo Qingyan, I slaughtered 77 members of the Yanzi Dock. I've long been steeped in wickedness and am beyond forgiveness. But I really believed I avenged them, only to realize, these junior brothers were all killed by him. PFF'd. While speaking, Mo Hong could no longer endure it, blood kept spilling from his mouth, and his breath became weaker and weaker. Having just had an arm slashed off and internal organs shattered by a kick, it was already remarkable that he had held on until now. Junior brother, Qingyan, Mo Ruo, though I did not avenge you, I have still inflicted severe damage upon him. Even if we meet again, I shall have no guilt in my heart. Mo Hong reached out with his hand towards the distance, as if seeing something, his voice getting lower and lower until it could be heard no more. Zhang Zan reached out his hand, only to find that Mo Hong had already stopped breathing. He too was a pitiable person. Fu Qinghong shook her head. This Mo Hong was not inherently bad, merely misled by Mo Bai, nothing more than a pawn in his evil schemes. He's not pitiable. He willingly partook in evildoing, that itself is evilness. He cannot be forgiven simply because of a deathbed repentance. Zhang Zan shook his head. Regret does not undo the error of straying onto the wrong path. The regret that one swallows often chills the heart more than unfollowed through crimes. Yes, what young Master Zhang says makes so much sense. Fu Qinghong looked at him admiringly, and then with a smiling face, suggested, are you tired? Would you like me to give you a massage? Quote question mark question mark question mark quote. Zhang Zan's face twitched. He was uncertain whether swallow